Of a quorum of queens. Let's meet one's loyal subject. Speaking the Queen's English, Colin Lane.
Thank you. Hello.
Taking the Queen's shilling, David Mitchell. Wearing the Queen's uniform, Sarah Millican. And the groom of the stool, Alan Davis. Hear their queenly quartet. Sarah goes.
Play with the Queen of Hearts.
Nice. Colin goes.
You are the dancing queen.
Oh, I love a bit of Scandi music. And David goes.
And the homecoming queen.
And Alan goes.
And what do you do?
Right, what can you tell me about the royal we?
It doesn't smell.
And we're off and running.
Man there edging his first delivery slip. Richie Benno.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Was that an Australian accent?
Oh, come on! I've been working on that since you were last here.
Really?
They don't open their teeth up.
They? Yes.
They. I've busted my crown,
Oh, no.
you see?
I'll go over to this side. What can you tell me
Yes.
about the royal we?
There was something weird about George III's wee. I think maybe it was purple, and then they thought he had porphyria,
Yes.
and then now they think he didn't have porphyria, but they were definitely saying there's something up with this guy's wee.
Yeah.
Also, he's gone mad.
Yes. That is entirely correct, but I'm heading in a different direction. Why might a royal person say we?
First person plural.
It is the majestic plural. It's known as nosism from the Latin nose for we. It's the idea that the royal person, instead of referring to themselves as I, in fact, says we.
Implying there's more than one of them.
Yes, well, we can trace it back to Henry II, and it used to mean God and I. That's what it really comes from. We've got Henry II there and his successor, Richard I, and it's Richard I that introduced the motto, Dieu est mon droit, God and my right, and that remains the royal motto ever since.
Got your crown, Dave, got your crown.
I like to think this is like a working crown. This isn't like a Parliament opening coronation crown. This is a crown...
Daily.
Yeah, you can wear it all the time, you can go
dishes.
into battle.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a paper and some fags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to the garage at 3 a.m. for
Yeah.
munchies.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, the Queen doesn't actually use the pronoun one as much as you would think. They analysed all her speeches since 1952, and she uses I 6 times more often than she says one. It's a parody, really, of how she speaks, because it isn't.
Unless she got bored of it.
Yeah, one's
must be
not
boring
doing that
being
anymore.
queen, so just mix it up a bit.
It must be quite dull, do you not think? Constantly having to open and close things.
I don't think, to be fair, you mean opening as in launching?
Yeah.
And, yeah. I don't think she closes many things. I don't think, when BHS went under, I didn't think
Now, who choose the Queen's food?
Beef eaters.
Bacteria.
Oh. Yes, we're going to accept that, except that we are in the land of honey.
It's a bee.
It's a
The
bee.
worker bees. The worker bees?
Worker bees are the other... It's not all the other bees, because they divide up into lots of
So
categories.
there's lazy ones as well.
There are drone ones, there are scout ones, there are worker ones.
There are product development bees,
Yeah.
aren't there?
Yeah,
And they've achieved very little recently. I mean, it is just honey, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's just strange.
Unless it's Manuka honey and then it's 15 quid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are those bees on?
But when you compare them to Kit Kat, I mean, Kit Kat, there's orange Kit Kat, various... I mean, they really worked on the product development
Yeah.
compared to honey, it's just honey.
So worker bees, they pre-digest the queen's food because she doesn't have the necessary glands to digest it herself. Even more unpleasant than that, they have the power to put her on a crash diet. What? Yes, I know. So she gets really big and heavy. She's too heavy to fly. And when they want to swarm, which they do once a year, they put her on a crash diet so that she loses 1/3 of her body weight, and so she's ready to take off.
Is there a committee or something? There's some level of management that goes, you know, the Queen's getting a bit porky. Maybe.
Genuinely don't know how these decisions are made. So, for example, choosing a new queen, they seem to select rather randomly a bee at the larva stage. And they give it a special diet, different from all of the workers. So these are queen cups. These are new queens being developed. Most larvae are fed honey and pollen by worker bees, but occasionally one is fed only royal jelly, which is a sort of protein that's secreted from the glands in the worker bees' heads. And this one is elevated to royal status and becomes queen. But I like that you asked the question, because the truth is, we don't know.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we used to think it was the royal jelly that made the queens develop differently, and we now think it's not what she's fed, but what she is not fed. So the fact that she does not get pollen and honey like the others, it actually makes her ovaries grow large, while the others' reproductive organs, the ones that get the pollen and honey, they actually shrink. It's a terrible life, actually, because when it comes time to get rid of her, she's sick or she's unproductive, she's not having any more babies, the workers kill her by balling her.
Oh, I don't know if I want to know what that is.
No.
It's not what I think it is.
No, large group swarms tightly around her and
Better than I was thinking. Yeah.
raises her body temperature until she is fatally overheated. I know!
This is awful.
I love that we're all feeling sorry for this queen bee. But actually, we say queen bee, since Aristotle's time, it was always assumed it was a king. It took until the 1670s. There was a Dutch scientist called Jan Swammerdam, and he dissected a king bee under a microscope and rather just shocked to discover the size of the ovaries, which represent 1/4 of a mature queen's body weight. He also learnt this great thing. If you remove the queen from the hive on a stick, all the other bees will follow you. And this is a beekeeping trick that people use now. And the most bizarre use was in the 18th century in show business. There was a beekeeper called Daniel Wildman. He had a honey shop in London, and he promoted it by riding horses, standing up while wearing a beard of bees.
And that made people buy from his shop rather than just think he was mad.
It's pretty startling if you have a look. This is not him, but these are other people who have the skill of getting bees to do as they please.
Did they all have honey shops as well?
I think they were just selling tickets in the end, because there was a woman called Patty Jones, so she was the wife of the inventor of the modern circus, Philip Astley, and she used to perform horse riding stunts, but she used to have a swarm of bees on her hand imitating a lady's muff. I mean a hand warmer.
So do I.
Now, who has sex for 15 years and gets licked to death by their own children?
Got to be an insect or something, is
Is
it?
it something like a termite?
It is a termite, you're
It is.
absolutely right, yes.
Did you know?
Let's just be warned, even if you like insects, I think this is a bit gross, OK? So
And
we are...
I don't really like insects.
Right, so in that case...
I accept they're necessary.
Yeah, they are necessary, but this is, honestly, a yellow pulsating mass. So the termite queen, just like bees, is the only fertile female in the colony, and she gives birth to all the rest. But unlike other insects, mates for life, and I mean literally. So, after choosing, a king spends 15 years incessantly mating to produce the nest colony. She produces 1 egg every 3 seconds.
No.
I know. So over 250 million in her lifetime. And
It's like a paintball machine.
so that you can just see her head at the front, and that is her body, and that her egg-producing organ becomes so massive that she's rendered entirely... There she is. Oh. I know. She's played by Olivia Colman in the film. She's literally pulsating, producing eggs the whole time. She grows to be too large to leave the cell. She can be 100 times the size of the other termites.
Is that the king there on the end?
No, that's her.
The black bit at the end
Is
there?
her.
That's her.
And the rest is egg-producing organ.
Oh.
I said it was gross.
Is she having sex and producing an egg at the same time?
Yeah, so she's endlessly shagging. She goes through about 5 to 10 kings in her lifetime. I think they just get exhausted. I think they can't deal with it.
I mean, does she do it the same way every time? Like, do they have to experiment with the sex life to keep it fun and...
Yeah. No, I think she just gets rid of the king. And she can't move, so her babies tend to her, they feed her, they clean her, they drink the secretion that she sweats. Look at this. I did warn you, it's revolting. But when she has outlived her usefulness, so she's not producing enough babies anymore, the children surround her and they lick her to death. They literally suck the fluids and fats from her body.
Who'd have thought that there was such a disgusting story behind something as lovely as a termite?
Anyway, what's wrong with the Queen in this picture?
Nothing at all. Oh, no, he's kissing her hand. Sorry, I just realised.
Did you think that was a clean-shaven gentleman?
Is she dead?
She is dead. This is Inés de Castro. So we are back in the 14th century. She was the mistress of the then future king of Portugal, Peter I. He had a wife called Constance, and she died. It was very sad. So he immediately moved Inés in, and they had 3 illegitimate children. Now, his dad was still king then, Alfonso IV. He was furious. So he had Inés killed. Well, obviously, Peter didn't like this very much. So he caught 2 of the killers, and he had their hearts torn out and pulverised before him while he ate dinner. So quite cross. I mean, on the whole, quite cross. 6 years later, he became king. He announced that he and Inés had secretly married. He dug her up and, and placed her on the throne and forced the court to swear allegiance to her and kiss her hand. So she's not only dead, darling, she's been buried for 6 years.
Well, in which case, they've done a great job.
Yeah. She looks pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look worse than that many days.
But actually, in this country, we had a similar sort of thing. So in 1667, 230 years after Catherine of Valois, she was the queen consort of Henry V, died, her tomb was disturbed. They were doing some renovations in Westminster Abbey. And after that, if you paid a little bit extra to your tour guide, they would take you to see the corpse. It became a sort of tourist attraction. And Samuel Pepys took his wife and daughters to see it. And this is really weird. He wrote in his diary, "I did kiss her mouth, reflecting upon it that I did kiss a queen, that this was my birthday, 36 years old, that I did first kiss a queen." I know. She was 230 years dead.
It still counts.
If it was his first queen, was it his first corpse, though? Maybe it was. Maybe he couldn't say it was his first corpse because he's already done that, so he had to say it was his first queen.
Awkward.
Yeah.
Oh, the corpse thing, oh, that.
That was my 30th.
Is that the dead queen?
I would suggest that a wooden carving.
It looks
of
wood,
her,
yes.
Yeah, if that's her dead body, it's had work.
Yeah. Inés de Castro was a bit of a stiff, you know, even for a royal. Now, who was the first queen to get a Brazilian?
Oh, Cleopatra.
Why do you think her?
She used to bath in milk. She was up for stuff.
Ass's milk?
Yeah, not even normal milk.
No.
She married several of her brothers. She was what we'd call now a weirdo.
No, it is not
Someone
her.
get a Brazilian husband?
We are heading indeed to Brazil, if that helps. I had to have this picture explained to me when I first saw it.
Well, we know more about you than we thought we did. I'm in the same gang as you.
Go, girl. Honestly, I thought it was caramel. I had no idea what it was. We're going to 1807. We are going to Portugal. The Crown Prince, Dom João. Napoleon is approaching, and he takes his entire court, including his Queen Carlotta, and he thinks, let's go to one of our colonies, and they head off to Brazil. So they go off in a convoy of ships from Lisbon to Brazil. 10,000 people go with him. And it's unbelievably overcrowded and unhygienic, and a lice infestation breaks out. So, in order to get rid of the lice, they all, including all the women, they have to shave their heads, they have to throw all their powdered wigs away and cover their heads in pig fat. Now, they're about to arrive in Brazil. They want to make a bit of a stir.
What to do?
But they've got bald heads and pig fat.
I think that'll do the job then.
They arrive at a place called Guanabara Bay, and Carlotta and all the other royal women emerged with their bald heads covered with improvised turbans. And apparently, so the story goes, the Brazilian women thought this was the height of European style, and it became the local fashion. The problem is that Brazil is full of a wonderful African-Brazilian population, and I would have thought that the turban thing would have come from that part of the world originally, but we don't know.
So they were bald everywhere then?
Are you worrying about...
I've just grown my winter's coat in.
This one looks not unlike David Mitchell.
Do you not think she looks a bit like Marty Feldman?
Yes, crossed with David Mitchell.
This is building up into quite the compliment.
Whether the story is true or not about the Brazilians, there is a long history of commoners imitating royals. There was a man called Guillermo, Duke of Mantua. He was a hunchback, so we're talking 16th century. And so all of his courtiers put humps on to compliment him.
Aww.
You've got to judge that carefully.
Yeah.
It might look like you're taking the piss.
Just a... Here's another interesting fashion for royals. Louis XIV, he had a fashion that courtiers should have one long fingernail. Why was that?
My husband's got one special toenail for scratching his eczema. It's awful, isn't it? It's genuinely true. Is that the sort of thing you're after?
I feel in this show you and I are in danger of oversharing.
And you seem to be fine with that, though. That's...
Yeah, as long as he keeps it to himself, I'm all right.
Right.
Yeah.
He hasn't really, has he, now?
No.
He's only told me quite recently, and we've been together for nearly 15 years. So there's nothing I can do about it now, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Stuck with it.
Except maybe pay more attention in the future. So the one long fingernail, what do we reckon?
Is that a cane that he's leaning on, or is that the fingernail?
No, he didn't have the fingernail, so it was the courtiers who had...
Everyone else had to have the fingernail.
Yes.
Is it to do with his anus? Let me just get that out of my head.
What's it doing in your head?
Just imagine it.
That is your takeaway from this show.
Yeah.
Pulsating termite and a fingernail up Louis XIV's arse. Now...
So in this reality, he said,
Yeah.
I want any of you to be ready.
Yeah.
There's no
Yes.
telling who I'm going to ask
No.
to stick their fingernail up my anus.
It's-
I want
So-
you all to grow it. I don't want it to be a specialism. I want to say, you, now!
No, so he decreed that nobody was allowed to knock on his door. So instead...
Scratch.
Yes. They had to scratch really gently with one finger, and so it became a thing that you grew a fingernail especially to scratch on the king's door, and it really rather suggested you had the king's ear. I know, weird rules. Honestly, it would have been better off if they'd done it up his arse. I just think it... Anyway, moving on. What was your best chance of seeing the Queen's ass in the 18th century?
Asking really, really, really nicely.
Is she standing underneath some sort of a vacuum?
Those are bees, I think.
Is it a donkey?
Yes, it is.
It's not the Queen's bum, is it?
It's not the Queen's bum at all. This is Queen Charlotte. She was the wife of George the...
George III?
George III, absolutely right. And she had...
Very good on
He's
this
very
one,
good.
yeah.
I'm tickling it out of him.
That's Nice
tightly.
secret, yeah, an anus full of facts.
The anus of fact. It was...
Yeah. It's actually the working title of my memoir.
But it wasn't a donkey, it was a zebra. It was known as the Queen's ass, given to her by the governor of the Cape in South Africa in 1761. It was a wedding present. He sent a pair. He sent a male and a female. Unfortunately, the male, no stamina, died en route. But the female arrived only a year late for the wedding, but hey. And it was a very popular attraction. Lots of people had never seen one before. And she had stables at Buckingham Gate. And George Stubbs, the great painter, produced a marvellous large painting. And apparently she bred it. I mean, not... say not her personally. But apparently they painted white stripes on the backside of a male donkey to persuade her to mate with it. And it worked and gave birth. So what would that be? A donkey and a zebra?
A donkra.
Donkra.
Zebri.
Zebki.
It sounds like a condition. It's a zebroid.
Zeb...
Oh, you know how you can't sit very well. He calls me zebroids. Yeah.
Ah, they
That's
like
a
that.
very good photo. For 18th century technology. Amazing photo.
It does look like a donkey in leggings, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Donkeys in tie.
Apparently they use it, the same technique for breeding racehorses. Some stallions will only mate with mares of a particular colour.
I wear a George Clooney mask quite often when I... On my bum, you understand.
Yeah. We've got a dog collar, a hound tether, a game noose, and you've got the horn. What game can we play?
What noose have we got?
A game noose.
Oh, a noose that's up for
It's a
anything.
game.
Game.
Well, let's just try and work it out. What might you do with a game noose? So that's the third one.
Is it where, you know, you don't want to shoot pheasants, but you might encourage them to commit suicide? You're sort of saying, maybe, I mean, you're a pheasant. What is there to live for? You know? Anyway, there it is. I mean, to be honest, if the pheasant's killed itself, it's not the same thing as eating it having shot it, is it? You could probably make an argument that it's like a vegan pheasant.
This is kind of what David is talking about. It's about pheasants, but you want to be able to carry them home.
Like little soft handcuffs or something.
Well, I think it's more you put it round its neck, darling, and carry it home on your belt.
It's like a pheasant clip.
Exactly, darling. Yes. Where the hell am I going to put my pheasant? Oh, I know. I've got my game noose.
Yeah.
So all of these things come from one game. A dog collar, a hound tether, a game noose and a horn from somewhere around 1470, this game.
Is it a sex game?
Depends how you play it, I suppose. Let's not limit ourselves.
Is it cards?
It is absolutely cards. So the world's oldest full set of playing cards, it's called the Hofjeer Hunting Pack. It's currently at the Metropolitan Museum in New York City.
What's the top one? It looks like a balloon whisk.
So instead of the suits that we have today, if we go through them, the dog collar on the bottom, and then the game noose, and then the horn, and then a hound tether.
Oh, OK.
There weren't any rule books until the 17th century, so we don't know what kind of games they would have played. But this would have been one of the first packs to have a queen. In Europe, they originally had no queen. They had a cavalier on horseback instead. But around the 15th century, they start to swap them out and start to have a queen. But lots of things have changed in games, because the queen in chess was originally the vizier, so the sort of advisor, the minister. The chessboard was a battlefield, and then it eventually became the royal court. So you get the vizier, the infantry, the cavalry, the elephants, and the chariots. They become the queen, the knight, the bishop, and so on.
And in Monopoly, when did they start having the little dog and the hat? And
That is a very good question. They were, in fact, all just charms off a charm bracelet.
Oh.
I know, sorry.
Yeah, that's a shit answer.
Sorry. I don't know, Sarah, but let's hope one day somebody finds out.
Thanks.
They'll just edit the bit out where I tell you the truth. OK.
I believe they were charms from a charm bracelet.
Did you get that from your anus of fact?
Yes, yeah, I've just popped into my own anus.
Now it's time for the short walk to the chopping block we call general ignorance. Fingers on buzzers, please. What's the oldest object in the crown jewels?
Is it the Queen? It's not a bad guess.
Wow, that's really loud.
I'm sorry, I turned the volume right up. It's an old spoon.
Yes, you are absolutely right. It is an old...
How did you know that?
Another one out the anus.
Yeah, I know.
How old, David?
Well, most of the crown jewels were lost at the Civil War. So almost everything is post-Civil War, and there's the odd thing left.
Well,
The anus speaks! There's only very few things from before that, so from before then.
so it's late 12th century, so it's a 10.5-inch long anointing spoon. It's one of only 4 things that we have which predate the Restoration. The other 3 are some 17th century swords. It's from about the time of Edward the Confessor. You get a set of coronation regalia which gets passed down from ruler to ruler. But then, of course, as you say, the monarchy was abolished and the new government decides to melt everything down. But there was a guy called Mr. Kinnersley. He was the yeoman of Charles I's wardrobe, and he bought the spoon for 16 shillings, about 11 days' wages at the time, so it's not a complete fortune. And when the monarchy was restored, he returned the spoon.
Did they give him 16 shillings? Or
No, he just gave it back. He just returned it.
What a lovely gesture.
Yeah. Now, who wrote the Queensberry Rules?
The Marquis of Cream.
He endorsed them. He did not write them. They were written by a Welshman called John Graham Chambers, so he founded the Amateur Athletic Club. He's probably famous for the fact that he rode beside a man called Matthew Webb. Anybody know what Matthew Webb did?
He was in a sketch double act.
Sketch double act, yeah.
He was a really funny one. He was really, really funny.
Matthew Webb, first person recorded to swim the Channel in 1875.
You said the first person recorded. Does that mean that other people did it and just didn't tell anybody?
I mean, sure, people have been doing it for years.
I mean, we don't know, do we? Because they didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, just kept it quiet.
Yeah, it's like the moon. Who knows how many people have been popping up to the moon?
Yeah.
It wasn't Columbus that discovered the Americas. The Vikings went there ages ago. The Vikings probably went to the moon.
Yeah. I think the strangest adoption of the Queensberry Rules boxing was a sport. It was called horse boxing. And it was the invention of a guy he invented in Berlin, an African-American boxer called Bobby Dobbs. And it's essentially a boxing match, but you just sit and punch each other on a horse.
While the horses have a little chat.
Yeah.
Can you think of a quicker way of making horses despise humanity?
Apparently, in 1912, it was demonstrated at a tournament in Germany, and they thought of putting this into the German army's, you know, proper officer training. The new sport will be valuable for the soldier on horseback in time of war, as when he loses his weapons, he will have to fall back on his natural means of defence. It didn't work out as a sport. Anybody know why?
Can't hold the reins.
Horses did not want to stand still. Which brings us to the final fanfare of the scores. In first place, with a sovereign 8, it's Sarah! In second place with -1, it's David! In third place with -7, Colin! And in fourth place with a magnificent -25, it's Alan! Only to thank Sarah, David, Colin and Alan and leave you with this queenly quotation. When Edward VII was asked if his mother, Queen Victoria, would be happy in heaven, he replied, "She will have to walk behind the angels, and she won't like that." Good night.